do harmony and discord live in harmony?
Surely not.
Yeah, are we getting like a new version of Preservation and Ruin, but it's harmony and discord here? That seems to be a pretty decent antithesis, to each other. So I could totally see that. And that's when we'll get, somehow they will all the shards will be picked up by someone else. We're going to keep clumping up the shards further and further, Spoilers for the end of Mistborn Era 3, by the way, with that one.
Welcome back to Following Note on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 294, and we are covering the early release chapters of Mistborn Era 3 Ghostbloods. It's not clear if they're chapter 1 and 2. They're just the early release chapters, and Brandon didn't say any more. Elliot, how are you?
I am doing swell. I think we are a ways away from the release of this content. So I'm excited to talk about it, but also excited to completely forget about all this in the 3 years it's going to take before we get this book.
Yeah, speaking of the time duration, I'm surprised these chapters exist, period. Like, how does he have this to read at this convention, let alone share at like a shareable format? Anyway, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing great. To answer your question, Trevor, I think all he's doing is he's like, okay, I've at least figured out, and like he's far enough in to know what the setting is going to be. Like that's probably set in stone. And that's most of what I took from this is what is our setting going to look like for Era 3 and, who's a character or two. And that's a lot of what I got. So, yeah, we have a cool setting. I won't steal your thunder, Trevor. I'll let you kind of intro us here.
And Paul, you said set in stone, but this is Mistborn, so it should be set in steel.
Ooh,
set in
you're
metal,
right.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Set in steel. You're absolutely right.
I learned that lesson.
All right. The early Mistborn Era 3 setting that you guys have been alluding to seems to be modern day, or at least modern day technology, plus magic. And that's where we're at. Or maybe like early 2000s technology, because she's wearing headphones. So, so maybe like 2005. So, what were you guys, before we really get into anything here, how are we feeling about that? I'm like kind of pessimistic about that, if I'm being honest. Like, I was certainly proven wrong with Mistborn Era 2. Mistborn Era 2 might be the best series he's ever written, and I was the most disinterested in it going in. So, with that caveat, I'm not super jazzed about this setting.
I know what you mean, because I've been nervous about more modern settings. The medieval side, the kind of medieval or Renaissance eras, is like so easy for me to dive into and follow. It is harder, but I do think Yumi is a pretty good example of kind of, at least Yumi is even a little more on the futuristic side than modern. And I think Yumi does a great job with that. There is a distinct dichotomy there, to be fair, between Nekiro and Yumi, right, and the worlds they're in. So you do get a bit of both. But I think that was done really well. And I was nervous, I was skeptical going in, but that gives me some hope. So I have some hope here for Ayven, our notable character who I expect we will be following. And yeah, so I'm kind of with you, Trevor. I'm not as initially interested by the modern setting. However, I'm not going to take away any points or subtract anything at this time for that reason, because I do trust that Brandon Sanderson can use that well and has a plan. Yeah, exactly. It's noted in our outline here that this was outlined in 2004. Is that right?
Uh, yes and no. He had a rough,
Roughly.
yeah. He had a rough estimate of Mistborn eras, and he always wanted to include a modern day convention in his Mistborn story,
Okay.
and he had that back in 2004. That was the extent of it. That was the joke. Elliot, how are you feeling?
I am feeling I, hard to put into words, I think, what I'm expecting from Mistborn Era 3. I share the same hesitancy about a modern day setting. There's something magical, and I don't mean like sciency magic system, more just like special.
Whimsical.
Yeah, there's something special about reading a story set in a world that is so far removed from my life experience and finding pieces in that I relate to super hard. There's something really cool about that. And so when a story starts off and I go, oh, she's getting on the subway to go down to the convention to not get tickets, like I've done that. And there's like I've done literally exactly that in my real life. And so there's a lack of something magical or special about that does kind of like turn me off a little bit right on the beginning of like, meh. Like I could go to downtown Denver and just do this. But you guys brought it up already. Yumi, I think we've seen other examples. I trust Brandon. I think he's gonna know how to make this feel like the Cosmere and not my boring Earth life. So I want to see where he's going with it. I think it'll be fine, but I'm a little hesitant.
I'm glad you said that, Elliot. And I think you're absolutely right. I think this provides an opportunity. I'm now thinking of like some of the limited scenes you get at the start of I'm not going to say any spoilers for it, but for Isles of the Emberdark, you get a picture of mundane modern life as we people know it, right? And you get a bit of a rise above within the story, like you get the picture of normal, boring subway riding, whatever life, and then usually some kind of stereotypical call to action or thing that comes up, and that will be the question of the story. Obviously, if it sits here in a very comfortable little, 2000s metropolis like setting, I don't think the book and series will be very popular among his writings. But we do already get no major hints or no major like plot points, I think, but we do get some little nods, right? It's pretty implied that she's descended from someone very famous, right? I took this to be Vin right away. I don't know if it could be somebody else. I took this to be descended from Vin. Wait, but wouldn't really make sense. So I
Well,
was instantly thinking of who else, is involved here, or who else is this, notable descendant, Steris or someone? I don't know.
so the line is she liked to think of herself as the great however many greats granddaughter of Redacted, but that doesn't make sense because Redacted didn't have any offspring.
Yeah,
That's
what I was thinking.
That's the couple sentences. So it's not Steris. And something else I gathered from that, we are further removed from Mistborn Era 2 than I thought we'd be, because they have specific lineages and year like dates all recorded in Mistborn Era 2, right? Like they all know who's descended from who. That's the whole like Vanisher kidnapping thing, is that we're kidnapping heirs of Mistborn and stuff like that. If she doesn't know how far back she'd have to go to get to Vin, that implies to me that we're much further away from Mistborn Era 2 than I thought we'd be. I might be reading that too much into that, but that was the inclination I got is we're pretty far removed from Mistborn Era 2, not let alone Mistborn Era 1. So yeah, she's likes to imagine herself as the great granddaughter of somebody redacted, but it's almost certainly Vin. And
But hold on a second. She's Terrace, though.
she is I guess it could be Sazed.
Or
And Sazed didn't have any offspring, so I guess it could be.
That's what I thought that was a reference to, was because Harmony comes up a couple of times.
Yeah.
Almost as if it's implying, oh, I'm a descendant of a god himself. But then, yeah, they redact that name as it just says, I don't know.
Maybe the redacted word was Harmony, and that he was trying to avoid spoilers. So yeah, that would make more sense.
Okay, so to be determined on who Ayven may or may not be descended from. But it seems clear just from that comment to me that he intends on drawing upon the history there, whether that's drawing from Era 1 or Era 2. You've got a lot of options there now. We haven't seen it yet, but I'm curious, just like random ballpark guess, how much hemalurgy do you think is going to be around here? I feel as we get further into Mistborn history and current events, more and more people have spikes of whatever in them.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, now we're in like pretty modern era, like jewelry I expect to be a big thing, like piercings and things like that. Like, Ven all the way back, her copper earring, all that stuff, and wasn't out of the ordinary. And I'm really wondering how things like that, if also just how the magic system will behave here. Is it going to be the same as Era 2? We obviously had a huge change from 1 to 2, but that makes sense there.
So I've read Mistborn Era 2 fairly recently. I read it as we were reading Isles of Emberdark. And two major plot points in the Lost Metal that kind of go under two minor plot points in the Lost Metal that are like cutting edge technology that were kind of left to the imagination is one, the bands of mourning are somehow drained by the Malwish and then they steal them. They legally take them. And then two, the set, Telsin and Wax's sister and her band have successfully discovered hemalurgy without killing people. There's a detail in that in the climax of the Lost Metal that you can like shave a small portion of someone's soul into a hemalurgic spike without killing them, and it only takes like 20% of their investiture as opposed to like 100%. So that relates directly to your question, and I'll get back to that in a second. Third is Atium and Lerasium are back on the scene. By the end of that book, both Wax and Wayne are full Mistborn because they were in the explodey room when the Lerasium or when the Harmonium was split, and we got Atium and Lerasium back. To refresh your memory, Atium is the See the Future metal, and Lerasium is the Make You a Mistborn metal. So, with all that in mind, I think hemalurgy may be much more widespread if we found a ethical, in quotes, way to do it without, stabbing someone through. So I am expecting hemalurgy to be much more of like it's not taboo, but it's also not like you're not supposed to do it. It's like
you go to like the voodoo doctor and
it's like drinking,
it's like sketchy.
Yeah, drinking after hours. Like you're not supposed to do it at work, but you can do it while behind closed doors type of
thing. Elliot, as you were saying that, what I was thinking of is I'm like, if we're drawing real world connections, it's a bit different how someone's investiture would work, right? But Are there going to be clinics where instead of you go like on Earth, you can go like donate blood or plasma or things like that? Do you go donate a portion of your investiture
Oh
for
yeah, sure.
money? You
Brandon
know,
would absolutely do that.
the farm like the
Sure.
big pharma on Scadrial is paying people for their investiture. Like
Investiture insurance.
totally see that happening big time here. Like they're just doing that, and you know I don't know, whatever they want to use investiture for. I don't know. Go give 20%. And then that would be an interesting question of would you I like if you donate blood, you could do so every so often, but not often. Does it
Right.
would it restore over time? Would you potentially be tapping into endless investiture, or do people, my thought would be no, you don't. You have so much and that's it. But anyways, I'm just running with that comparison, maybe a little too far.
I mean, that type of like humor and jokes of like modern technology and magic at the same time I think where Mistborn Era 2 shines, of like soothing parlors and whatever Wayne is, slider chefs who create speed bubbles around themselves to make your food really fast and then bring it out to you. Like that type of humor, I think, is actually where Brandon shines in Mistborn Era 2. And so I would be excited to see investiture donation drives for the war effort or something like that. That'd be funny.
They should have organized sports at this time, right after Wayne's
Noseball, yeah.
inventions and things like that. So I'm expecting some leagues, and there's probably going to be allegations of like that person was hemalurging, like they had a spike and they were using investiture during the game, and you get banned from the league, all the things.
And then
I'm fully
they
expecting
win the
things
Wayne
like
Cup
that.
when they
Yes.
finish, when they win the league,
exactly.
they win the Wayne Cup. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. What about our other storyline here? Oh, wait. Well, hold on. Before we get to the Malwish storyline, there's a headline on the newspaper. Did you guys catch the headline on the newspaper?
I sure did. It was probably the most plot relevant point, I thought, in the whole clip. The headline read something to the effect of discordant murders something in the 8th octant or whatever.
Discordant kills 3 in the 4th octant.
Yeah, which I'm sure Brandon included that very specifically because we kind of ended Mistborn Era 2. Trevor, you said you've read it recently, so fill me in here when I say it wrong. We kind of ended Mistborn 2 on a little bit of a cliffhanger of Harmony's Harmony, but something is not right with Mr. Harmony. And there's this like shadow, this like dark version, Discord. Is that going to be a big backdrop to all this? The whole Harmony versus Discord part of this? And you've got a whole now, like a following, like a cult following behind Discord that are the discordant.
I mean, I absolutely read into that. Of there does seem to be a well-known mafia or splinter faction religion. We saw the Church of the Survivor and all that. Yeah, discordant. And I assume it's capitalized because everything's capitalized in these things. And yes, is Harmony full-on Discord now? And is that well known on the planet? Like, that's a really interesting thought. But then also couple with that, in Isles of Emberdark, we saw not a survivorist, the other one.
Pathian?
Thank you. A Pathian, specifically refer to Harmony. So Harmony is still a term.
And I think Harmony is used as a term even earlier in this bit.
It is,
I think
yes.
Ayven thinks about, oh, there's a little mist cloud in the alley. I'm going to go play with it. It's super cute. And, oh, yeah, a little bit of Harmony.
Yeah. Yes. So do Harmony and Discord live in harmony?
Surely not.
Yeah, are we getting like a new version of preservation and ruin, but it's harmony and discord here. That seems to be a pretty decent antithesis, to each other. So I could totally see that. And that's when we'll get, somehow they will all the shards will be picked up by someone else. We're going to keep clumping up the shards further and further, Spoilers for the end of Mistborn Era 3, by the way, with that one.
All right. What I assume is down to the Malwish continent, we pick up with Basdrik. Basdrik is a Malwish. Is he like a scientist or something? I don't remember his occupation.
I think he's like a farmer because they're hunting beetles to like protect their crops. And then there's a little line in there somewhere where it's like he poured himself a glass of orange juice made from the fruit of his own trees or something.
Oh yeah, that's true. Elliot, you have a line on the outline, and I'm so disappointed in myself that I did not think of this because I tried to.
This is where the farmer stuff comes in too.
Yeah, I try to link everything to this movie in my head. Elliot, you said anybody else get Rogue One opening scene vibes, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't because I absolutely should have. Because young father of a small daughter gets caught up with by the evil Empire guys, and they mother and the daughter run off. Yeah, it's absolutely the opening of Rogue One.
And you've got the guy who's trying to put himself all into the farming, but strong hints that he's got some other kind of a past, and he knows who these thugs are coming in. Yeah,
and the mom comes over. It's like, I thought you were done with this. Yeah, okay. I definitely should have gotten Rogue One vibes. Anyway, so I'm a lot more interested in this storyline right off the bat because more Rogue One vibes. We know how the Malwish Empire kind of ends up in the future. They're quite literally in Isles of Emberdark space imperial fascists is how they self-identify.
Yeah.
And the Rogue One vibes. I mean, are we not? I'm very curious to follow what I assume is a protagonist in a government that is going in the wrong direction. I'd be really curious to read that story. If we're rooting for Basdrik and his family, but he's caught up in this government that is going in AWOL against his morals, what do you do as if you're an involved politician or if you're getting roped back into the military? Is this the secret police that have come to arrest him, or is this his old military buddies that he's trying to run from? I'm really curious about this storyline more so than the other ones. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is definitely. It feels like it's supposed to be the initial pull. I have a feeling that Ayven's storyline, just as a guess, is gonna be more long-term, build-up of a character. And Basdrik here is where we're gonna be introduced to a lot of these evil organizations, maybe behind the scenes and these things. I think the Rogue One connection was genius. Well done. I think that seems pretty spot on here, of kind of a past that's haunting and things like that. I think this is kind of going to be the initial draw, if you will. I'm thinking back to Kaladin Shallan early on. You get a picture of two very different parts of the world, and I absolutely think this is going to be the initial draw. Everyone is like, all right, what's happening with Basdrik right now? And Ayven is more like the long game throughout the series, maybe would be my guess.
A couple of things I noticed that might push it in a different direction than Trevor, where your head was going based on all the Rogue One parallels here. There's some interesting details about these guys, secret police or whoever this is, that come in that make me actually wonder if these are not the Malwish that are coming to talk to him, because he notices a couple things. They're wearing black and red.
Yeah.
Which we haven't previously, I don't think, associated that with Malwish, but that doesn't cross anything off necessarily. The bigger point I noticed was he notes that they have unique accents.
Yes.
And usually when Brandon says that, he means off-world.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if these guys are not Scadrian that have come to talk with him. And a name popped into my head. And so I went on the Coppermind and found a couple of data points that might support my thinking. The name I thought of, Trevor, you've read the Mistborn stuff recently again, so help me. Trell.
Okay, yeah. Autonomy.
Trell is, yeah, like autonomy basically, but there's a whole religion behind it on Scadrial. Red is associated with Trell.
True.
Like, according to Coppermind, when multiple times when Trell is brought up, the color red is part of that. Could this be autonomies following people or Trellism or whatever?
It's possible. I'd be very surprised if Trell was the an antagonist in Ghostbloods, because I feel like we've already done that, and we pushed Trell off world at the end of Mistborn Era 2.
Yeah.
Now, autonomy could be coming back for seconds. That's sure, but I'd be surprised if it was Trell. I'd actually go more the Odium route. If we're trying to find something for black and red, I'd go more Odium Retribution, that these are Rosharans, but I'm not super convinced of that. I could also see this just being Ghostbloods.
Ghostbloods, yeah. That's a very, very simple explanation.
Right, like they could just be, from like Cell, or something where is more technologically advanced than Scadrial, but only like just barely,
And maybe their origin isn't even all that important, and they're just Ghostbloods. And that's our intro here, is that Basdrik has previous ties with the Ghostbloods, and we're just jumping right into that as our main plot string throughout this whole series.
But even if these guys, the Mafia or whoever this is rolling up, even if they're not Malwish, which I'm glad you pointed that out, they probably aren't. Even if they're not, I'd be very curious to get a Malwish protagonist in Basdrik. I think that's a very interesting thread to pull on. So I am quite excited about that.
It is very interesting going into this with the knowledge we have from Isles of the Underdark.
Right.
Very interesting, because we're assuming Isles of the Underdark is after this.
Surely.
And we see, like you were talking about, the state in which the Malwish Empire gets to. So if it's not already that in this series, we know it's headed that way, which, does make it kind of an interesting lens to view those characters through.
I will go ahead and echo that I agree that we're not going to deal with a problem that was dealt with in Era 2. It is tempting, but I definitely expect each era, like even thinking on to a future Era 4, that it's all going to be someone or something new. If it is from a same, like maybe root cause, like Trell or something, then it's a new organization or new kind of premise put on it, at least. If not, then I think it gets a bit dull after a while. So, yeah. I was
about to prompt you for this, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have something that I think will be kind of interesting to read. So, remember how I don't look at the Coppermind at all? Well,
Yes.
I looked at the Coppermind out of curiosity, and I found this excerpt, which was like about information on Era 3 Mistborn. And the sourcing from this comes from starting in roughly like 2015, 2016 to like 2022.
Okay.
All the way through this quote. So reading it, it feels like it's a bit outdated. And I feel like there have been some changes that were made. And I thought it was quite fascinating to read. So I'm going to read. This is an excerpt from the Coppermind, which at several times quotes other people, including Brandon Sanderson. And I'll read through it. And I think it is kind of interesting. about the setting, some things that are similar and some things that I don't think we're seeing. But regarding Mistborn Era 3, it says the third trilogy will be set in the early computer age with 1980s technology. The main character is planned as a terrorist woman who is a computer programmer and Microburst. Her brother is also planned to be a character. Peter has described her as, quote, brown terrace geek girl. Though he does point out that this could change by the time the series is actually being written. Brandon backs up this description and describes it as a sort of, quote, how nerd culture works on Scadrial, end quote. Brandon had initially planned for this trilogy to feature an Allomancer SWAT team with a team of Allomancers hired to take out a serial killer, but is now leaning more towards a spy thriller. It is planned to be released in the late 2020s. So I saw that while I was looking for more and more information from other places about this, and I just got a good chuckle about Brandon being like, yeah, it's going to be to describe how nerd culture works on Scadrial. That I got a good kick out of that.
Because we all wanted to know how that was.
Yeah, exactly. How it works on Scadrial, I have a feeling is going to be akin to maybe how it works on Earth in some ways if we do see that. But I thought it was kind of funny. It said it initially, like some of those early references to like 1980s technology was a long time ago. And from the glimpse we've seen, it looks like we are past that in my from my taking thing. Once as soon as I saw levitating cars, I'm like, okay, we are not in modern day. You know, maybe there's going to be a mismatch. Maybe they figured out flying cars earlier. But I don't think we're seeing early computer time. So I thought it was interesting reading that and kind of seeing maybe where the vision started. My understanding is Brandon also started with a different vision for Era 2 than what actually came out, right? I don't know all the details on that, but it's kind of fascinating to see maybe where the ideas and the outlines began and maybe where they are going.
Can we go back to the Allomancer SWAT team for a second? Let's not gloss over that. I want to dwell on that thought for a second, and that's a bummer that apparently that's not what's going to happen, because it says initially had planned, but is now going to move on to a more spy thriller. But I'd like to read about an Allomancer SWAT team. That'd be fun.
That would be pretty cool. Allomancers all with whatever modern technology they have. At this time, okay, if we're looking at 1980s in this context, you know, it's maybe a little less impressive, but still really cool to see this, like, you know, team breaking in through buildings and, you know, all this stuff. That'd be pretty cool to see a high speed allomantic chase, you know? That would be pretty cool. I actually keyed into more of, it says the main character is planned as a terrorist woman who is a computer programmer and Microburst. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
So click on the link that Coppermine gives you. That is a twinborn. That is a name for a twinborn.
Okay, gotcha.
Where Wayne is like a slider, I think they call him.
Yeah.
A Microburst is a twinborn. So
okay.
I couldn't tell you why.
I think I missed that, and I was thinking like, oh, this is a new name, new thing, or something like that, and that makes sense because I was wondering how, you know, how the magic system would adapt and things like that. So, yeah,
we didn't get much, but with what we do have, I'm intrigued. I don't know if I would say I'm excited, but I am intrigued. Anybody else have any other?
Oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt you, Trevor. Looking at it further, a Microburst. It's specifically that link goes to the page for Microsil. It says Microsil is the external enhancement pushing metal, and a Microsil misting is known as a Microburst. A Microburst burning Microsil and touching another Allomancer will cause the latter's reserves of metals that are currently burning to disappear. And give a huge burst of power to the recipient. So essentially draining metals from others and utilizing them. So there's your context there. about microbursts. If that is still, once again, that's we consider still fairly speculative.
Yeah.
I imagine that would be a detail that could stick around instead of the 1980s early computer technology. But yeah, there you go. As far as what you were saying, Trevor, back on topic, I am intrigued, and I think the more we look into it, the more I'm getting excited. A lot of that is writing on. I just trust Brandon Sanderson to write well and to do well with these settings that he chooses. I trust that changes that we have already kind of seen him make, and that he probably still will make, will be in the interest of providing a really compelling story. And if there's anything he's done great, it's always been characters. So I have a feeling that, we're still going to get that level of quality. And so with that, that's plenty for me to be excited for Mistborn Era 3. Am I less enthused about the setting? Yes. That is personal preference. And that is something that I am more than happy to set aside as we get closer to this.
Which comes out first? First book of Mistborn Era 3 Ghostbloods or the Final Empire trailer?
I think this is a very tough question because I think it's a question that Brandon himself is going to have to choose and think about what he wants that order to be.
I have my answer. I think it'll be the Mistborn trailer by about 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe.
I think the Mistborn trailer will be at Dragonsteel, and for this book, that would be my prediction.
That'd be an epic Dragonsteel to go to, that's for sure. If I'm picking, I'm most excited for the Mistborn movies. Like, I just can't get past that. I'm so excited. But I expect the books to at least be done. Released? It's a toss-up. I think we'll see Mistborn Era 3's first book before we will see the movie.
If it helps you at all, this is pushed until December of 2029. That's where it's slotted as a release.
And I think a lot is going to depend on how much of Brandon's time does the movies take up. He has said he wants to, maintain a focus on writing. He's a ridiculously fast writer. And so I fully expect he will still publish books during the time he's focused on the movie. But I could also imagine a world where the movie ends up sucking a lot more of his time than he thinks it will.
Sure.
And maybe the release of this book does get delayed because I think he's not going to want to release it, this book, Ghostbloods, Mistborn Era 3 first book, until he knows he's got momentum behind it to release all three, assuming it's a trilogy. I don't think he's going to want to get stuck where he puts this one out and then gets sucked into a bunch of time and it takes him 10 years before he gets Era 3, Book 3 out. He knows he wants to not do that. So I could see him delaying this one a bit until he's fully ready.
Yeah, I believe the current release schedule is 29, 30, 31 for all three books. And the reason why he's pushed it that far is to give himself that time to make sure he likes all three books before he releases the first one. With that said, next week, we are going to be committing an entire episode to talk about the Apple TV Plus deal and the incoming adaptations. Everything we know as of today and the recording of that episode. And we'll be bringing in a special guest to talk about that episode. And then past that, we will have one more episode. And then we'll be going on break and coming back after that. So thanks for joining me, Paul and Elliot, and we will reconvene next week.
See ya.
Toodles.